Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Krishna. So this morning we are studying from Madhumati 10 to 11, chapter 7, and we're assigned verses, I think, 26 to 31, and we are going to recite together text number 28.
Verse 1.
Yeah, you got it. Tvam tu kalpa kabir daksha subhago mrita bhashanaha nakarta nehase kinchij jadon matta pishachavat. Tvam tu kalpa kabir daksha
Subhago Mrita Bhashana Nakarta Nihase Kinchid Jaron Matta Pishachavat. Please chant. Tvantu Kalpa Kavir Daksha Subhago Mrita Bhashana Nakarta Nihase Kinchid Jaron Matta Pishachavat. Tvantu Kalpa Kavir Daksha Subhago Mrita Bhashana Nakarta Nihase Kinchid Jadon Matta Pishachava. Vantuta Pakavir Daksha Subhago Mrita Bhashana Nakarta Nihase Kinchid Jadon Matta Pishachava. Anyone else would like to try? No? Go ahead. No? Okay, we'll do word to word. Twam, you, tu, however, kalpa, capable, kavi, learned, daksha, expert, subhaga, handsome, amrita bhashana, having nectarian speech, na, are not, karta, a doer, na ihase, you do not desire, kinchit, anything, jara, stupefied, unmatta, maddened, pishachavat, like a ghostly creature. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. You, however, although capable, learned, expert, handsome, and most eloquent, are not engaged in doing anything, nor do you desire anything. Rather, you appear stupefied and maddened as if you were a ghostly creature. Purport. Ignorant persons often think that renounced spiritual life is meant for those who are impotent or homely or incompetent in practical worldly affairs. Sometimes foolish people say that religious life is a crutch for those who are not expert enough to achieve a high status in society. Therefore, King Yadu has described the qualities of the mendicant Brahman in order to show that the Brahman has taken to renounce spiritual life in spite of great potential for worldly success. The Avadhuta Brahman is described as being expert, learned, good-looking, eloquent, and in every sense qualified to be great material success. Still, the Avadhuta has renounced material life and taken to Krishna consciousness. Going back home, back to Godhead for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is the real work of a human being. The followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu simultaneously cultivate their own Krishna consciousness and strenuously endeavor in missionary work to help others become Krishna conscious. Often, foolish persons deride the devotees by saying, "Why don't you get a job?" They think that one who is sincerely endeavoring for spiritual enlightenment and who is also enlightening others is not doing anything practical. Foolish materialists will pay millions of dollars to extend their lives by a few weeks or months in a hospital, but they do not appreciate someone endeavoring for eternal life. There is no actual logic in material life. The act of trying to enjoy without Krishna is in itself the culmination of irrationality, and thus we cannot expect to find anything ultimately rational. Ultimately rational or logical in a materialistic life devoid of Krishna consciousness. Many devotees of Krishna come from wealthy, learned, and influential families, and they take to Krishna consciousness in order to perfect their lives, and certainly not due to lack of opportunity for material advancement. Although sometimes persons in material distress approach the Supreme Lord for help in material life. A real devotee of Lord Krishna voluntarily gives up all types of material enjoyment, knowing that nothing but love of Krishna and service to his lotus feet are the actual perfection of life. What a nice purport by his disciples of Srila Prabhupada.
First of all, I would agree that it's very wonderful recital. For a wonderful, insightful purport, very, very relevant. I think the BBT editors who wrote following Srila Prabhupada really got it right in this purport. Om Jnana Timiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshana Tasma Shri Guru Namaha. So this morning, we're going to do a little bit of a review, which gets us before the 24 gurus. A little background, how we got there, and what their main teaching is, the main teaching of all 24 gurus. It doesn't mean individually 24 gurus, but it does mean what their collective teachings primarily emphasize. So a little background. As you may know, Krishna came to this world, spent 125 years displaying his pastimes, trying to attract all the conditioned souls back to him, back to home, back to God. And so at this point in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're at a point in time where Krishna has decided to wind up his pastimes and leave this world, go back to the spiritual world. No longer physically visible to the devotees and others. And so his beloved disciple, friend, confidant, companion, Uddhava, finds out about the Lord's plan, and he wants to go with him. So therefore we have Krishna and Uddhava meeting. Krishna is instructing Uddhava, because although Uddhava wanted to go with him, Krishna felt better that Uddhava stay in this world. For what purpose? What purpose? Do you know what purpose? Yes, somebody said preaching, but he spread his word. Yes. There was certain things Krishna wanted to accomplish while he was here with his pastimes. And that was visit his devotees in different places. And one place in particular that he didn't get a chance to go was Badrikashram. So he wanted Uddhava to go to Badrikashram to spread his teachings so that those living entities would be benefited. Does anybody know who, just by the way, the same kind of thing happened with a dear devotee of Lord Ramachandra? Anybody know? Yes. Yeah, Hanuman was also asked to stay back. Lord Ramachandra took all of Ayodhya, all the devotees, they went back to the spiritual kingdom. But the best devotee, Hanuman, was asked to stay back. So here again, you see the same scenario taking place. Lord Krishna is going to leave, and the best devotee, Uddhava, is being asked to stay back. further the purpose of the Lord's advent. Well, that's okay. Uddhava is willing to follow the order of the Lord, but he knows the situation of the living entities. He knows that they're very, very attached to this body and bodily circumstances, surroundings. And so Uddhava, you might as well get back to God. So Uddhava asks for some instructions, some specific instruction from Krishna. And that instruction was about how to become detached from this material world. We're all very, very attached in different ways to our material circumstances. And the Lord's purpose is to give instruction to become detached. So that's what the 24 gurus are basically explaining. How to become detached from this material situation. I've asked Madhumati to read a section from the latest Back to Godhead magazine. And we were reading this together last night. And the question came in my mind, since Uddhava wants to know about detachment, why are we so attached in the first place? I mean, does it make sense that we're attached? Well, the questions to the editor sections of Back to Godhead magazine, this question of why are we so attached is addressed. So I wanted Madhumati to read it with all its core and humor.
Okay, this is in the question and answer period for the BTG. It's just the latest BTG. Do you get the BTG here? Yeah. Okay, so you can also read it. So the question asked is, isn't spiritual life with its longing for another world an attempt to escape from reality? Yes, spiritual life is an attempt to escape, but not from reality, but to reality. That makes sense, yeah? Let's objectively examine what people call real life. It is a life of perpetual struggle from the womb to the tomb. I don't know who wrote the response here, but it's pretty good. A good sense of humor, anyway, and reality. Anyways, it's from the womb to the tomb. Struggle for education amid the back-breaking pressure of others' expectations. Struggle for employment amid cutthroat competition. Struggle for family harmony amid hot and cold domestic wars. Struggle for health amid the aging of the body, and ultimately the futile struggle against the death sentence inherent in our mortal bodies. Well, what a nice description. Amid all these struggles, we busy ourselves in complicated versions of the animalistic pursuits of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The uncertainty of success in these pursuits causes us constant stress, and we toot the occasional success as our happiness. Throughout this real life, quote, in quotes, real life, we take up each morning to witness our bodies emit a foul-smelling substance. We hastily flush away the foul reminder that our bodies are not how we make them look by dressing and making up. But we can't flush away the coloring and discoloring of our bodies as they age, sicken, and succumb. Even before such distresses overwhelm us, our life gets so boring that more patients visit psychiatrists due to boredom than due to distress. Very interesting. How have we declared a life so inane, so pointless, so disappointing, so deadening as real life? How have we been deceived into accepting as real such a pathetically low estimation of our human potentials? They're good questions. Our real life is far more dignified than the indignities our bodies subject us to. Our real life is far more graceful than the disgraces that the world buffets us with. Our real life is the life of spirit, the life of freedom, the life of joy, the life of eternity. The Bhagavad Gita, and indeed the sacred text of the world's greatest wisdom traditions, proclaims that our real life is beyond the life of this miserable material world. In our real life, our innate longing for everlasting life is fulfilled by recognizing and realizing our spiritual immortality. Therein, our intrinsic longing for love is eternally and completely fulfilled by reposing it in the all-attractive, all-loving, eternal Supreme Person, Krishna. The life of love is our real life, not our present, ugly, and unfortunate caricature of life that we mistakenly label as real life. So, by fixing our ambition and aspirations on the world beyond while doing our necessary duties in this world, let us rise from pseudo-reality to reality. It's nicely said.
Yeah, another nicely put section from Prabhupada's disciples and followers. So why are we attached? Why are we attached to that rather than the spiritual life? That's ignorance. When you read in Prabhupada's books and hear from the devotees, you often hear this word ignorance. And sometimes it's difficult to figure out, well, what does it mean, ignorance? Does it mean that I can't operate a computer, or does it mean I don't know that someone walked into a store down the street? Ignorance. Anybody want to volunteer? What is ignorance?
Comes to my mind is not being aware of something, you're ignorant of something, so you don't know that it exists.
Yes.
Lack of knowledge of things which are directly related to you or indirectly related to you and your activities from day to day and what you do, why you do things.
That's good. Yes.
The Prabhupada calls it a forefunded knowledge, spiritual reality.
Ignorance is what causes attachment, as we just had in this reading from Back to Godhead. Illogical, irrational attachment to things that will never make us happy and actually are quite messy situations. Why are we attached to that? We're attached to that because of ignorance. So therefore, Buddha wanted instruction on detachment. In other words, he wanted the ignorance that binds our consciousness to this material nature to be cleared up, to be eradicated by knowledge. So ignorance could be said to be that which keeps us attached to this world and prevents us from developing detachment. And that's what Uddhava feels he needs to be able to do Krishna's work after Krishna leaves this world. And so that brings us to the point where in Krishna's narration of knowledge to Uddhava, he's explaining 24 gurus. Guru is meant to give you knowledge, right? So there are 24 gurus that were identified by King Yadav. We're going to try to understand some of them today. In the first verse that we're assigned to read today, here's a description of one who has this detachment. What is the Bhagavad Gita says that for a spiritual person, you can know them by how they walk, how they talk, how they interact. So if we apply those principles to understanding the behavior of the Avadhuta Brahman, we can understand what it means to be detached. So I'll just read a couple of verses at the beginning of this section, Srimad Bhagavatam. Maharaj Yadu once observed a certain Brahman Avadhuta who appeared to be quite young and learned, wandering about fearlessly, being himself most learned in spiritual science. King took the opportunity to inquire from him as follows. So as we read in the purport this morning, he was quite young and handsome and learned, appeared quite learned, but he didn't exhibit attachment, the irrational attachment that was describing back to Godhead. Text 26, Sri Yadu said, "O Brahman, I see that you are not engaged in any practical religious activity, and yet you require a most expert understanding of all things and all people within the world. Kindly tell me, how did you acquire this extraordinary intelligence? And why are you traveling freely throughout the world, behaving as if you were a child?" So the answer to the question of Maharaj Yadu is the instruction that this Avadhuta Brahman got in a very unique kind of way. 24 gurus. We have enough trouble trying to follow and understand instructions from one guru. What about 24? So what I'd like to do is read the list of these 24 gurus and then ask you during the reading to note down any particular one of the gurus that attracts your attention, or who'd you like to inquire more from or hear more about, and then we can go over and see what lessons can be learned by all of us from studying these 24 gurus. So at least in your mind, note down. Okay, King Yadav learned about 24 gurus from the Avadhuta Brahmana. Just minutes. Earth, wind, sky, water, fire, moon, sun, pigeon, python, ocean, moth, honeybee, bumblebee, and then honeybee, two kinds of bees. Elephant, a honey thief, deer, the fish, prostitute, Lingala, Kurara bird, a child, a young girl, an arrow maker, a serpent, a spider, and a wasp. 24 gurus. I have some that attracted my attention. Anyone? Yes, Radhinath.
Very efficient. So there were two, the sun and then the ocean. It's just from certain studies and things like that, those were interesting. Was wondering what things would come from this. Because I'm a Florida boy, so I often visit the ocean. And in my, I had one godbrother who did a astrological reading, and so I have an exalted sun, and so I was just interested in from that perspective about that.
You're also an experienced devotee, many years. What do you think the instruction is from the ocean and the sun?
Of course, there's the Brahma Samhita verse where it describes the sun as the eye of the Lord. There comes up repeatedly in Vedic literature is the position of the sun. But as a guru, I don't know.
Here's what the Bhagavatam says. From the sun, he had learned how to avoid entanglement, even while coming in contact with sense objects. He had also learned about the two different modes of perception based on seeing the real form of the soul and seeing the false designated coverings. This is philosophical understanding. Anyone else have any comments on the sun, what you might hope to learn?
One thing I was thinking, doesn't describe that how the sun purifies, and maybe it's the same thing, saying that it purifies the, if even there's urine out there, it purifies without getting contaminated.
Yeah, he learns how to avoid entanglement even while coming in contact
Yes,
with
I guess,
sense objects.
yeah.
And the ocean? What do you have to say?
The only thing that comes to mind is that it carries out its activities without going beyond its limit. But there is, it's described that even like Prabhu was walking on in maybe Venice Beach, and he was comment about the ocean. It's very mighty, etc., but it also follows some line of demarcation that doesn't generally go beyond that. But once again, from a guru perspective, I don't offer much.
I don't know what exactly is meant here, but there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita which talks about how so many rivers flow into the ocean and it rains over the ocean, but it never overflows, stays equipoised. And it says in Bhagavad Gita, it says that one person who is like that, like despite like a lot of like distress and happiness that comes within, like from the material world, stays equipoised, that person can attain like peace.
And the overall teaching again are about detachment. And so I think that's a good point you make at the time. That although there may be influences coming in constantly, when one is not agitated or disturbed by them, that's a lesson in detachment. Anybody else have a favorite one? Yes.
I don't know if I remember it correctly, but I think the fish basically teach them how to not go for bait and not be caught on a hook. So it's not like that one. It shows that he learned not only from positive things he saw, but also from how certain other living entities were doing things wrong. You can also learn from the mistakes of yourself or of others.
Yes. That's exactly what is described here. Instruction learned from the fish is that he comes under the sway of attachment. The sense of taste is caught on the baited fish hook and must die. Similarly, an unintelligent person who is victimized by the insatiable tongue will also end up losing his life. I like the ones, maybe because I have so much fear for them, but the python and the snake, the serpent, snake, serpent, same thing. Isn't a python the same as a serpent? But actually, they give two different teachings. The python gives a teaching of just accepting what comes in life. Actually, in earlier cantos of the Bhagavatam, there's a description about Prahlad Maharaj. And Prahlad Maharaj was touring his kingdom one time, and he came across that person known as a Python man. And he was surprised by one thing when he met this person. He was surprised that although he was living the life like a python, accepting only what came and not making an endeavor otherwise, still he was what? Yeah. He was fat.
Very fat.
So what do we learn from that?
Don't lie down like a want to stay slim.
Lying down wasn't the cause of him being fat. He got so much that he wasn't afraid of what was going. He wasn't going to get anything. He's going to be depriving himself in some way, but he actually provided so much, even though he just laid down doing nothing, making no endeavor. He got so much that he actually became fatty. That's the example of the python. Now, the serpent or the snake, although it seems to be the same to me, he does impart a different lesson. His lesson is to, let's just read it. The Avadhuta Brahmana learned from the serpent that a sage should wander alone, should not live in any prearranged place, and should always be careful and grave, and should not reveal his movements.
It seems like there's a difference between the python and the serpent. I mean, I don't know exactly, but it seems like the serpent, moves very fast and goes, but from the description, it sounds like as if the python is a snake that doesn't move. It seems like it's stays in one place. I mean, I don't know. And then, yeah. So that's the difference between the python and the serpent. And
What
that's
is
what
it?
you-
Which is,
Yeah, serpents can sail on the ground really fast, like cobras or whatever, but the python usually lies waiting for its prey to come to run past, and then it strikes.
That's where the difference is.
yes,
I was just thinking in relation to the python and just trusting that enough will come. In the Bible, I think it mentions that even the birds always have something to eat. So why should we be in distress? And then I also wanted to mention, I don't know if I remember this correctly, it was long ago that I read these sections. And I'm guessing it's the young girl, and please confirm, but the lesson had to do with, I think she was making some rutis or prasadam, and bangles on her arm were making a lot of noise. And then somehow the Brahmana learned from this that if there's too many people together talking nonsense, it's not good for you. So I just thought that was probably, in my opinion, the most creative lesson out of them all.
yeah. Should I read it?
Please.
Just one sentence. The instruction received from the young girl who kept just one conch shell bracelet on each wrist is that one should remain alone and thus steady one's mind. Then only will it be possible for one to fix one's mind completely on the personality of Godhead. I was talking too much for Jalpa.
But for devotees, we put a lot of bangles because we come together and do kirtan, yeah?
And that's what Maya does. Maya gets us off on our own, isolates us. Just speaking with the devotee yesterday about that. How that's the influence of Maya, is to get us out of that loud cacophony of bangles, example, and put us alone. Then the mind has us. Any other ones? I have the
I wanted honey thief.
honey thief. What do you think it is?
I guess somebody going for the nectar, but if it's about detachment, I don't know. Honey thief.
The instruction received from the honey thief is that he steals the honey collected with great effort by the honey bee. The person in the renounced order of life has the privilege of enjoying before anything else the food and valuable things purchased by the hard-earned money of the household. So saintly persons, they come and visit, they get the best of everything. Even though we work hard, it's taken away.
So the instruction here, the honey thief is be a sannyasi.
Well, these are just short descriptions, and they're elaborately described in the Bhagavatam verses. So you can always go there for further instruction.
Well, I mean, putting jokes aside, it seems like what is being said is, in other words, you don't, if you remain renounced order of life, you don't need to go and work like an ass. Everything will be provided. So in that way, concentrate on your meditation. And
it's a good example of the difference we're talking about, what ignorance means. So ignorance means that it makes me sometimes you have a senior moment, get what you were going to say. Yeah, maybe it'll come back to me. But there is one famous example of the 24 that we haven't touched on yet. That's Pingala Rasa. Who knows the instructions? Pingala.
She was disgusted by the actions of being prostituted. Just was that she had a epiphany of
Not wanting to continue that kind of lifestyle.
Yes. The thing that I find interesting about the example of Pingala is that it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam that she had some hope, some hankering to be fulfilled. And it was a false hope. It would never be fulfilled. Yet night after night, she would be hankering for this one. She used to say, well, this one will pay me so nicely. And that one's coming now. But on that fateful night, no one came, despite her hankering. And so that's when she developed that frustration, that renunciation, that why am I doing this? This is useless. I'll never be happy this way. And it's described actually that at that point, she for the first time became happy. She felt some happiness in the detachment. And that's an important lesson about material life, is that one of the things that we often find ourselves doing is hankering for a better situation, hankering for this material desire to be fulfilled, that desire to be fulfilled, particularly in Grihastha ashram, or maybe not Grihastha ashram, let's say householder life. Grihastha ashram should mean a little distance from this. But in householder life, so many needs. We think of them as needs, but actually they're just our hankerings, our desires, material desires. And we can spend a whole life chasing after them and not be satisfied. The only way to be satisfied is to become detached. Become detached. There's actually an extension of this teaching that I put in this little book I put together. Recently published this book, Writings in Pursuit of Virtue. And there's a story in here about something that happened to an old man. The old man drove into a parking lot to go to a barber shop to get a haircut. And he stopped the car to get out and started walking towards the barber shop. But he left the car in gear. So as he was walking, the car, which was still in gear, moved forward and ran over him and killed him. And it struck me that that's a perfect description of what Prabhupada calls our automobile civilization. Everything is built around hopes and hankerings for the wonderful civilization to develop. But actually, these things are killing us. We maybe discuss these things in the Varnashram discussion in Varnashram. Materialistic civilization dangles before us false hopes, and then when we run after them, they kill us, or they cause us great difficulty. Same example is given instead of the motor car civilization. We take the animal transportation, like the donkey. The donkey, they beat the donkey, load him up. But gives the example of the washerman. Washes so many clothes, load up the little donkey, he can hardly walk. And then they dangle a carrot on a stick in front of him so that he continually tries to get that carrot. But he's actually just moving the burden on his back. So false hopes of enjoyment are dangled before all of us. We take those things, we think we'll be happy and satisfied if we get them. But we can never be satisfied. It's just like that carrot. It's always luring us, but never can really satisfy us. So that's the teachings of Ingala. Actually, if you study these 24 gurus, even though specific examples are given, I think you can find instruction that's similar in other examples. So any other last gurus? The elephant, you know, the elephant, that's one of the Brahmachari's favorite ones. Yes.
No, this is correct, but I think this example is given in many other parts of the Bhagavatam or scriptures, but the hunters catch the male elephant by putting a female elephant there, and then right next to it, like a booby trap, a hole covered with leaves and things. And the elephant runs after the female and just falls into the hole. I don't know what's that.
Yes. The elephant, big elephant, such a large animal, how can they be controlled? They're controlled by sex design and easily caught in the trap, as Prabhu has described.
So knowledge, just hearing about these things, can one actually become detached? I mean, I've heard these so many times.
We're very attached, all of us. So therefore, the prescription is to hear repeatedly. Therefore, we'll find the same descriptions in different parts of Bhagavatam, different teachings of the Acharyas. We'll get these examples time and time again. But constant hearing and chanting about these things, what else do you want?
I guess one day the light bulb will, like Pingala, it will happen, I guess.
Hope.
We read one verse yesterday which said that by observing these things around you, you can sometimes act as your own instructing spiritual master. So then we were just making the point that this is another way in which Krishna helps us to learn lessons, but it's certainly not the only thing that should be in our repertoire of spiritual practices.
Yeah, I was in a conversation recently with some devotees, and the idea came up, I think based on this 24 Gurus study, the idea came up about
I'll see you in a moment.
yeah,
That's why you have to become detached from from your thoughts.
and the other.
Yes. Anna.
I was thinking how it's important. It's when a person has a certain sense of consciousness, they see that consciousness in everything around them. I remember when we were doing Krishna lunch for healthcare heroes, serving Krishna lunch to hospital workers and medical workers. Me and Shruti Sakapuru, we used to drive around town to give prasadam boxes, and we used to start seeing these healthcare centers in these places that we never even thought that, oh, there's a healthcare center over there. Oh, there's a healthcare center over there, and the healthcare center over there. So like our vision changed. And recently I started studying to learn how to fly, and my vision also changed. Like everything I'm seeing is in that perspective. And so we can see the Avadhuta Brahmana, his consciousness is so immersed in spirituality that he just sees that everywhere in all these trivial things. And that's how his intelligence is changed. And I feel initially we need that training through our gurus, through another person, to develop that intelligence. And then eventually, once we get that training, then we can start seeing this everywhere.
Good point. Very good point.
And the point I was going to make is about becoming our own guru or concocting gurus. How do you know when you have a bona fide guru? These teachings of 24 gurus seems to encourage us to make up our own gurus or be our own guru. So I was in a conversation with some devotees and we were talking about this, and they referred to a situation where Srila Prabhupada was discussing with his disciples the same thing. And Srila Prabhupada made the point that you can't have your own guru, concoct your own guru. And even in a situation like these 24 gurus, you still need a guru to discipline you and keep you fixed, as opposed to just flying off. And he gave the example of how maybe they used to in schools, teacher would instruct the students by grabbing their ear. That's how you know the difference when you have a bona fide guru. Because the guru is there to keep you on the path, not wander off according to your mind. Or any other? Oh, I have another one. What time is it? It's the arrow maker. The arrow maker. He was so absorbed in his task of making straight arrows that he didn't know that the king himself was passing by. So the point is, we have to concentrate. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, with concentration, with determination on the instructions. Not worry about distractions this way and that way. So that's the example. strictly controlling one's mind. Anything else?
Or we can strictly control by taking prasadam, yeah? Right. Hare Krishna.
Antarat Srimad Bhagavatam.
You know,